There's a quiet little fishing town on the coast of Maine where the fog rolls in so thick some mornings that you can't tell where the ocean ends and the sky begins. In that town lives a man named Walter. He's 78 years old, and for most of his life, he was just a fisherman. Nothing famous, nothing flashy. Just a man with a small boat, calloused hands, and a deep respect for the sea. But a few years ago, something happened to Walter that changed everything. And what he discovered out there on the water is now being studied by scientists at one of the top research universities in the country. They're not studying a new fish. They're not studying the ocean currents. They're studying Walter's brain. And what they're finding could completely change the way we think about staying sharp and mentally strong after 70. If you've ever worried about your memory slipping, or watched a loved one struggle with brain fog, or simply wondered if there was something you could do right now to protect your mind for years to come, then the story you're about to hear might be one of the most important things you listen to all week. I'm going to tell you exactly what Walter did, how his daily routine rewired his aging brain, and the simple, unexpected habit researchers now believe could help any senior think clearer, remember more, and feel mentally younger starting today. Let me take you back about 5 years. Walter had been retired for nearly a decade. His wife, Margaret, had passed away 6 years earlier, and like a lot of folks in their 70s who lose a spouse, Walter found himself alone with his thoughts far too often. His days blurred together. He'd wake up, make coffee, stare at the newspaper without really reading it, and then sit by the window watching the tides come and go. His daughter, Susan, started noticing small changes during their phone calls. He'd forget the names of neighbors he'd known for 30 years. He'd repeat stories he'd already told her just minutes before. Once, he forgot her birthday entirely. That had never happened before. Susan was worried, and honestly, so was Walter. He felt like his mind was slowly slipping away, like sand through his fingers, and there was nothing he could do to stop it. One Tuesday morning, Walter woke up and decided he couldn't sit in that empty house another day. He pulled on his old boots, grabbed his worn-out fishing cap, and walked down to the marina where his little boat, the Sea Whisper, had been sitting unused for nearly a decade. The boat was covered in peeling paint and gold droppings. The engine sputtered when he turned the key, but it started, and Walter guided that old boat out of the harbor, past the breakwater, and into the open Atlantic for the first time in years. He wasn't even planning to fish that day, he just needed to be out there. He needed to feel the salt wind on his face. He needed to hear something other than the ticking of the living room clock. And that first trip out alone started something Walter never could have predicted. Over the next several months, Walter developed a routine. Every single morning, rain or shine, he would take his boat out for about 2 hours. He didn't go far, maybe a mile or two offshore, just enough to be surrounded by nothing but water and sky. He'd cut the engine and let the boat drift. Sometimes he'd fish. Sometimes he'd just sit and watch the seabirds dive. Sometimes he'd talk to Margaret out loud, telling her about his day, about Susan, about the funny-looking cloud on the horizon that looked like a rabbit. And then something remarkable started to happen. Walter began to notice that his thinking felt clearer. Names that had been escaping him came back. He started remembering details from conversations. His daughter called one evening, and Walter mentioned that it was the anniversary of the day they bought the Sea Whisper back in 1982, a date Susan hadn't remembered herself. She was stunned. 6 months into his new routine, Susan insisted Walter see his doctor for a regular checkup. The doctor ran the usual tests. Blood pressure was good for his age. Cholesterol was manageable. Then the doctor did a cognitive screening, the same one Walter had done about a year earlier. The results made the doctor pause. He looked at Walter over his glasses and said, "Whatever you're doing, keep doing it. Your scores have actually improved." Improved. That's a word you don't often hear when we're talking about cognitive function in someone approaching 80. The doctor asked Walter what had changed in his life. Walter shrugged and said, "I started taking my boat out every morning." The doctor smiled and nodded as if that were a perfectly normal explanation. But deep down, both of them knew there was something more going on here. As we get older, many of us accept that our memory will fade. We joke about senior moments. We laugh off forgetting where we put the car keys or why we walked into a room. But underneath the jokes, there's a real fear. We worry about losing our independence. We worry about becoming a burden. We worry about not recognizing the faces of the people we love. And that fear can be paralyzing. Walter felt that fear. He lived with it every single day. But what he didn't know, and what scientists are now beginning to understand, is that the aging brain is far more capable of growth and repair than we ever believed possible. There's a concept in neuroscience called neuroplasticity. It's the brain's ability to form new connections, to rewire itself, even late in life. For decades, scientists thought the brain was like a machine that slowly wore down over time. Now we know that's not true. The brain can regenerate. It can adapt. But it needs the right conditions. And somehow, without any scientific knowledge whatsoever, Walter had stumbled into creating those perfect conditions every morning on his little boat. About 2 years into Walter's daily routine, a marine biologist from the University of Maine was conducting a study on coastal fish populations. She happened to interview several local fishermen, and Walter was one of them. During their conversation, the researcher, Dr. Elena Marquez, noticed something unusual about Walter. He was sharp. Not just sharp for his age, but sharp by any standard. He remembered specific dates of past storms, detailed descriptions of fish migrations from decades earlier, and complex navigation routes without writing anything down. Dr. Marquez became curious. She asked Walter more questions about his life, his health, his daily habits, and the more he described his morning routine on the boat, the more intrigued she became. She asked if Walter would be willing to participate in a different kind of study, one focused on the aging brain. Walter laughed and said, "Lady, if you want to study this old noggin, you're welcome to it." What followed was a series of assessments, brain scans, and cognitive tests conducted over the next year. The researchers compared Walter's results with hundreds of other seniors in his age group. The differences were striking. Walter's hippocampus, that's the part of the brain crucial for memory, showed significantly more activity and density than the average for someone his age. His prefrontal cortex, which handles decision-making and focus, was lighting up like a Christmas tree on the scans. The scientists were looking at a 7-8-year-old brain that was functioning more like the brain of someone 15 to 20 years younger. And the big question was, why? The initial assumption was that Walter must have some genetic advantage. Maybe he just won the lottery with his DNA. But that wasn't it. His family history was actually quite typical, with several relatives experiencing significant cognitive decline in their later years. So the researchers dug deeper into Walter's daily life. They analyzed everything. His diet, which was fairly simple, mostly fish, vegetables, and coffee. His sleep patterns, which were decent but not exceptional, his social life, which was quite limited. None of these things alone could explain the remarkable state of his brain. But then they started focusing on his morning boat ritual, and the pieces began to fall into place. What the researchers realized, and what is now being studied in much greater depth, is that Walter's routine combined three powerful brain-boosting elements that very few seniors ever get all at once. The first was the obvious one, spending time on the water in nature. There's a growing body of research showing that being in natural environments, especially near water, has profound effects on the brain. The Japanese call it Shinrin-yoku, or forest bathing. Being near the ocean has a similar effect. It lowers cortisol, the stress hormone that in high levels can actually shrink the hippocampus over time. Chronic stress is like a slow poison for the aging brain. Every morning, Walter spent 2 hours with his stress levels dropping, his nervous system shifting into a calm, restorative state. Many seniors don't realize that the constant low-grade anxiety they feel about health, finances, or loneliness is actually physically damaging their brain. Walter was giving his brain a daily dose of peace, and it was healing. The second element was something the researchers almost overlooked because it was so subtle. When Walter was out on his boat, he was constantly engaging in what neuroscientists now call soft focus. He wasn't staring at a screen. He wasn't trying to multitask. He was simply observing the water, the birds, the weather patterns, letting his attention drift naturally from one thing to another. This kind of unfocused attention is incredibly rare in modern life. Most of us, even in retirement, fill every moment with news, television, social media, puzzles, or to-do lists. Our brains never get a chance to simply wander without purpose. And here's what's fascinating. Brain scans show that when we allow our minds to wander gently, without forcing them onto a specific task, a network in the brain called the default mode network becomes active. This network is crucial for memory consolidation, for making connections between different ideas, and for creative problem solving. Walter was unknowingly giving his default mode network a full workout every single morning. It was like a gym for his memory, except he was just sitting in a boat watching seagulls. The third element was the one that really surprised the researchers: loneliness. Walter was alone on that boat, but he wasn't lonely. There's a big difference, and it matters for brain health. Social isolation is a known risk factor for cognitive decline. When seniors feel lonely, their brains show increased inflammation, which damages neurons over time. But Walter had found a way to feel deeply connected while being physically alone. He talked to Margaret. He felt a connection to the ocean that he'd known his entire life. He waved to other fishermen as they passed. He wasn't isolated in the psychological sense. He had companionship in his memories, in nature, and in the familiar rhythms of the sea. This combination reduced his sense of loneliness without requiring him to be constantly surrounded by people, something many seniors find exhausting. The researchers believe this unique form of connected solitude was protecting his brain from the damaging effects of isolation, while also giving him the restorative benefits of quiet time. The scientists published a preliminary paper on their findings, with Walter as the central case study. They called it the marine mindset hypothesis. It suggests that the combination of nature immersion, soft focus, attention, and meaningful solitude may create a neurological environment that actively protects and even rejuvenates the aging brain. The study has now expanded to include over 200 seniors from coastal communities across New England. Early results are showing similar patterns. Seniors who spend regular quiet time by the water, who allow their minds to wander freely, who feel a sense of connection to the natural world, are showing significantly slower rates of cognitive decline than their peers. The research is ongoing, but the implications are huge. Now, you might be thinking, that's a great story, but I don't live by the ocean. I don't have a boat. How does any of this help me? That's a fair question, and it's exactly what the researchers are now working to answer. Because the good news is you don't need an ocean and you don't need a boat to get these same brain benefits. The core of Walter's discovery can be recreated by anyone, anywhere. Let me share a bonus tip that the researchers are now recommending based on Walter's experience and the early data from the study. This is something you can start doing tomorrow, no boat required. The researchers call it a daily nature sit. Here's how it works. Find a spot where you can see some element of nature. A park bench, your backyard, a window overlooking a tree, even a community garden. The key is that you can see something living and natural. Go to that spot at roughly the same time every day. Morning works best because the light helps set your circadian rhythm, which also affects brain health. Leave your phone behind or turn it off completely. Sit comfortably and simply let your eyes rest on the natural scene in front of you. Don't try to meditate. Don't force your mind to be empty. Just allow your attention to drift gently. Watch the leaves move. Notice the birds. Feel the breeze on your skin. If your mind wanders to memories, let it. If you find yourself thinking about the past, that's fine. If you start worrying about the future, gently bring your eyes back to the natural scene in front of you. Do this for at least 20 minutes. If you can do 30 or 40, even better. What you're doing in that time is recreating Walter's brain state. You're lowering your cortisol. You're activating your default mode network. You're giving your brain the space to consolidate memories and form new connections. You're stepping out of the constant stimulation that keeps the aging brain in a state of low-level stress. The researchers believe that just 20 minutes of this kind of soft, focused nature time, done consistently every day, can start to produce measurable improvements in memory and cognitive function within a few months. It's not a magic pill. It's not an expensive supplement. It's simply giving your brain what it evolved to need. Quiet time Walter still goes out on his boat every morning. He turned 82 last spring, and his daughter says he's sharper than ever. He still talks to Margaret. He still watches the seabirds. He still lets the boat drift wherever the current takes it. And somewhere in that simple ritual, his brain keeps getting stronger. The scientists are still studying him. They visit every few months with their clipboards and their questions. Walter doesn't mind. He thinks it's kind of amusing that a whole team of researchers is fascinated by an old fisherman doing what he's always done. But he also understands now that what he discovered out there on the water is something real, something that matters. Something that might help a lot of other people. If there's one thing I want you to take away from Walter's story, it's this. It is never too late to make a change that can protect your brain. The old thinking told us that after a certain age, decline was inevitable. We now know that's simply not true. Your brain wants to stay sharp. It wants to keep growing and adapting. It just needs the right conditions. A little bit of peace, a little bit of nature, a little bit of time each day where you're not trying to accomplish anything at all. That's not laziness. That's medicine. Ancient, free, and now backed by modern science. As we get older, it's easy to feel like our best years are behind us, like we've already peaked, and now we're just managing the decline. Walter's story proves otherwise. This old fisherman didn't have a fancy education. He didn't read scientific journals. He wasn't following a special brain health program. He simply followed his instincts, did what felt right, and paid attention to how it made him feel. And in doing so, he may have unlocked a secret that can help millions of seniors live sharper, clearer, and more connected lives well into their 80s and beyond. Many seniors don't realize that the small, quiet moments in life are often the most powerful medicine we have. We get so focused on diet plans, exercise routines, supplements, and brain games that we overlook the simplest tool of all: stillness, nature, letting the mind breathe. Walter didn't set out to improve his memory. He just wanted to feel less alone. He wanted to feel the wind on his face. He wanted to be back on the water where he belonged. And the memory improvement came as a side effect of something much deeper. He reconnected with life itself, and that reconnection sparked something in his brain that no pill could ever replicate. This simple habit could make a big difference for you or someone you love. It doesn't cost anything. It doesn't require a gym membership or a prescription. It just requires a commitment to give yourself 20 minutes of peace in a natural setting every day. If you can do it near water, even better. A lake, a river, a pond, even a small fountain in a courtyard. Water has a unique effect on the human brain. It induces a state of calm fascination that scientists call soft fascination, and it's one of the most restorative mental states we can experience. But even if you don't have water nearby, any natural setting will do. A tree, a garden, a patch of grass. The key is consistency and the absence of distraction. No phone, no radio, no to-do list running through your head. Just you and the living world around you. Imagine what 20 minutes a day could add up to over a year, over 5 years, over a decade. Those minutes aren't wasted. They're an investment in the most precious thing you own, your mind, your memories, your ability to recognize your grandchildren, to tell your own stories, to stay independent and sharp and fully yourself. Walter didn't know he was making that investment. He was just trying to survive the grief, but his brain was paying attention, and it rewarded him in ways he never expected. If you found value in Walter's story, I hope you'll take a moment to like this video and share it with someone who might need to hear it. Maybe a friend who's been feeling forgetful lately. Maybe a parent or grandparent who's struggling with loneliness. Sometimes the simplest solutions are the ones we overlook, and sometimes the best science just confirms what wise old fishermen have known all along. The sea heals, nature heals, quiet heals, and it's never too late to let that healing begin. Thank you for spending this time with me. If you want more stories like this, real people, real discoveries, and real hope for healthy aging, please subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. We share new videos every week, and we're committed to bringing you practical, science-backed information that can make a genuine difference in your life. Until next time, be kind to your mind. Give it a little peace today. It deserves that. And so do you.